Welcome to the Hustle Wing podcast. Today I'd like to welcome Andre Corbert, CEO of STT Logistics Group. Andre, thank you so much for being here with me.
Perry, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about our story with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I recently just made a temporary move, and many times I've done this where I've had to ship cars cross country, and I know that you guys, I don't know if you're exactly in that space. I'm excited to learn more in a second here, but it is really challenging to move big things around the country with people you trust. And so talk to me about what STT Logistics Group is.
Right, absolutely, I will. And just to get started from the beginning, we actually started as a car hauling company. That was the first thing we ever did back in 2015 when we started on the business. But then on 2016, on April, we had an opportunity. It was an oil drilling company, the manager of an oil drilling company. And so he said, we moved the pickup for him, and he says, "Hey, I got 16 pieces of equipment. Can you guys help me out?" And of course, we had no clue what we were doing. We had never moved equipment before, but we said, how much harder can this be? And so we said yes. We took on the contract. We moved the loads for him. Everything went well, and that's really when things shifted for us, and we actually opened up our eyes about this new industry. And so, to make a long story short, STT Logistics Group, what we specialize on is we're a one-stop shop for all of our customers' logistics needs. If it goes on a truck, a train, a boat, or a plane, we can move it for you, right? And so when we started working with people in the heavy hauling industry, we started realizing that a bunch of these people also moved different types of loads. However, depending on the type of load they were moving, they would have to go and find a different provider. So that's when we decided to, do a value-added proposition where we decided to handle all of their logistics needs in one spot. So when you're working with us, it's not that one person is doing all the job in regards to every single load that you're moving, but you as a customer, you only have one point of contact. But that point of contact within the company is working with 1, 2, 3, 5 more people that are experts on the particular load and particular route that you need to move on, right? And so that's how we make things a lot easier for our customers.
It's so interesting, and it's the car hauling space is really saturated. There's a lot of people in that space, and I assume that this space is a little bit more niche, right? Because there's maybe not that many providers. I'm sure there's still a lot, but way less than car hauling, probably, right?
There's way less than car hauling. Yeah, there's still a lot. There's still a lot, and there's all over the world, But yeah, the car hauling space is definitely very crowded.
Yeah, it's interesting, and a lot of times there's so much construction going on. I'm actually in Idaho right now, and there's so much building going on. And you wonder how, once you get out of the Sun Belt rentals, whatever those smaller equipment rental companies are, to these bigger pieces of equipment, you're like, how do they get that stuff in and out of these massive cities? And I guess you guys are a pretty key component in making sure that that happens smoothly and in a timely way. Um, and that brings me to the next piece, Andre. I really want to talk to you guys about what challenges, I mean, with this economic situation that's going on, are there any unique challenges or projects or maybe even goals that you have for the company that you can share with us?
Right. Well, the economic impact, the whole situation in the States right now, it did affect us partially, very little. But at the same time, what happened for us is we expanded in Mexico and Canada. In fact, Mexico now is 30% of our
Wow.
market for this year, and so thank God the crisis didn't affect us as much as maybe other businesses, right? And so what we do there is based on the type of machine that you need to move, or based on the type of load, because it's not always machinery, right? Based on the type of load that you need to move, we'll go ahead and find a driver that has the special requirements that you need, from the equipment that you need to load the trailer, the specific trailer that you need to transport the load, and the equipment to actually strap whatever load you're moving to the trailer, make sure it's properly strapped, protected. And then we do a whole background check with carriers in regards to the insurance that they're using. We get added as certificate holders. We do a bunch of little processes that at the end, what they do is they guarantee that our customer is going to have the best experience, the smoothest experience possible, and that if any issues were to come up, that we do have the right insurance for the load that we're moving, right? And then there's a bunch of different parties involved, especially when you're moving this really large equipment from one city to another. And when we're talking about main cities, a lot of the times what we do is we dismantle the loads, right? So the the big cranes that you see in the constructions, for example, those get dismantled. They get, cut into pieces basically and transported in different trailers. And one of the most interesting loads that we've moved so far was actually a very large crane. It was a Manitowoc 888 that was going to Nigeria. That was done at the end of last year. And so we had to pick it up. The first thing was dismantling it, and it was a crane from 1973. So
Wow.
not many people knew how to actually dismantle the load. What we ended up doing is we found not the previous owners, but the ones previous to the previous owners, and they had, a large company, and they still worked with this kind of cranes, and they said, well, I mean, for the right price, we'll go ahead and dismantle it, right? So we hired them. They helped us out dismantling the crane. We sent out an RGN, which is a specialized truck for very heavy equipment, that moved the main body, and then the rest of the pieces, it was 13 flatbed trucks that we had to use to move all the rest of the equipment. That was taken to the port, loaded into the boat, shipped to Nigeria, then 14 more trailers to take it to the construction site in Nigeria. And then we had one of the people that we had hired here help us out coordinating the putting everything back together in Nigeria and the other side of the world, right? So that was a very interesting project. It was something that took us all in all almost 5 months, right? Complex project. There's a lot of parties involved, and so it's very important that you're coordinating, because when we picked up all the fallout loads, for example, you have cranes. You're hiring cranes that are the ones that are going to be there loading the flatbeds with the counterweights and the arm pieces and everything. And so 1 hour of a crane service, depending on the type of the crane, is going to cost you $500 to $1,000, right?
Wow.
So you can imagine what a little delay by a driver could cost you, or on the other side, if the driver's waiting and the crane is delayed. So it's very important to keep good communication, open communication with all parties, keep everyone well informed, how everyone's doing, get everybody updated, and make sure that you coordinate everything as smooth as possible to avoid delays and issues like that.
So I you're saying it in a very nice way. I from my experience, I started out in the automotive world, and then I ended up getting into software and startups and whatever. But I know, and my whole family is a lot of blue collar jobs, electricians, people that work for ExxonMobil or part of the Valdez cleanup and all that stuff.
Mhm.
The thing is, when you're dealing with these drivers, and a lot of times when you're dealing with some of the heavy machinery, operators, it's the communication can sometimes break down a little bit. It can be a little bit of a challenge to get everybody on the same page. And so I'd love to know how you guys, number one, manage that. But number two, I want to segue to our base of people. So we have a lot of contract workers and people that are in the professional services space. So software engineers, marketers, salespeople, and whatever. So I'll get to them in a second. But how do you guys, when you're working on a project like that, how do you make sure that the communication happens in a timely, manageable, easy way where you don't have someone sitting for hours and hours and hours on either side?
Well, the first thing is we set the expectations from the beginning. When we hire any party, we tell them how we work, and we explain to them how communication is very important. Because one of the main things that you get here is people not answering the phone. That's like the most common thing that you get handling this type of situations, right? So we make it clear from the beginning. The agreements that we sign, because we sign agreements with everybody, and they have the expectations, and again, we're expecting communication, and we ask like pictures from the drivers once the machines are loaded. All of these things they're actually put into a contract, right? So they're actually signing a contract that states how we're going to work. And then the other thing is you need to put yourself, especially as an intermediary, you need to put yourself in the position, in the shoes of every person that you're dealing with, right? So people might sometimes have the um, impression that a driver maybe is a little bit rude, or is a little bit rough to talk to, or something like that. And in some cases, it might be the case. But how would you act if you're driving for 4 or 5 days in a row and hitting traffic jams, and and all those little things? So one of the most important things is make sure that you're putting yourself in the position of the other person. Try to understand how they're feeling, and it's not just about listening to what they're saying, but you have to pay attention and listen to what people are not saying and understand what they want, what is going to make them happy or comfortable in the situation. And when you need to negotiate, it's very important when you're in the middle of two people negotiating that you make sure you take into account what both parties want and need and find the middle point where both people or both parties involved in the transaction feel like it's a win-win situation, right? So it's not always easy, but if you pay attention to what people are saying and what they're not saying and what they really want, and at the end of the day, a lot of the times people, what they want is to be comprehended, right? I want you to feel empathy for me. I want you to understand how I feel after everything that I'm doing. And if I feel that you understand that and that you value that, then it just makes our interaction a lot easier.
It's funny. Are you familiar with the software world too much, or yes?
Not much. We're actually developing our own software right now, but we're doing this through a third party. They have a lot of engineers in India and some people in the States, and so they're working out this project for us because we've been using Salesforce for quite a time, but I think it's time for us to have our own CRM specialized even more for the industry.
Very cool. Before we jump into that, because that segue is really great into this next piece. One of the things, my background's in product management. So if you think of project managers, probably from your world, project managers are really similar in terms of bringing a software, bringing a piece of software to life. And the number one thing, if you Google software product manager, is they say have empathy for the user, have empathy. And we hear it so many times. I think I'm numb to it, but like really what you said extrapolates so well across many disciplines. Whether it's you're leading a business in any company, it's like really understanding what motivates the people on your team and all that. I think there's so many golden nuggets in what you just said outside of just logistics and heavy moving. But I don't want to delay. We have many people that are listening into the podcast, tuning in via YouTube. How if I'm listening to this and maybe I'm in sales and marketing, or maybe I'm what roles of people should maybe reach out? I know you said you had the software project, but you're working, you have overseas engineering. What are you guys working on where our pool of people can help support what STT Logistics is going through in the next year?
Right. So I think the two most valuable skills that we're looking for right now are people who are good at marketing, especially the copywriting part of marketing, and then salespeople. We're always hiring for salespeople. We currently have 44 salespeople in the team. We're very high sales company, right? Like we're very focused on sales, very sales driven, and we understand that at the end of the day, the most important thing of any company is sales, because it doesn't matter if you have the best product or the best service. I think you're going to agree with me. McDonald's is not the best burger you've ever eaten, but it's the company that sells the most burgers because they're known more than whoever makes the best burgers is not as much known as McDonald's, right? And so starting from that, we put a lot of work into sales, marketing, pushing our name out there, letting people know that we exist, what we do, and how we do it. Because hey, we need to get known, we need to get out of obscurity. Like Grant Cardone always says, your biggest enemy is obscurity, and you need to make sure that you're getting out of it.
It's what did Grant say? Your biggest enemy is
obscurity, right?
pretty valuable. What was I going to say? So if I'm a salesperson, I'm a marketer, I know this logistics space. Obviously, Hustlewing, we're going to put up a page for STT Logistics, and we'll help vet people out there that can take the next steps to maybe contact you guys and reach out.
Love
but
it.
Before we go too far, I want to talk a little bit about your story. I mean, you say that you've been doing this for so many years, and I was like blown away because you look very young. So either you have a really good diet, you have really good genetics, something's going on there. So I have a hard time believing you've been doing this for as long as you have. But talk to us about your story and how STT. I know you talked about the car transport, but how did you even end up in the logistics space?
Right. Well, it's a little bit of a funny story. I started with STT when I was 22 years old, but a couple of years prior to that, I was living in Guatemala. I'm originally from there, and so I got into a fight with my mom, and I decided to leave the house. Obviously, I was expecting her to say, "No, no, don't leave the house and go ahead. I'll give you permission." That's not what happened. She said, Well, get out of my house and see how it goes. So I was working as a gardener and a construction worker on and off for about 6, 7 weeks, right? And then I landed my first job, which was at a call center where they did car hauling. Fast forward a couple of years, I was starting and nothing to do with it if you want, but I was starting a restaurant reservation app. That project wasn't going to take off due to certain things that I realized. And so the guy that I had hired to train the sales team there was coming from the car hauling company. And he said, well, why don't we start our own car hauling company? And we were planning to become rich in 3 months, like most people do when they're starting a business, right? And then so we got into the business, and 9 months into the business, we're not really making any money. And he just decided one day that he was leaving, literally endorsed his shares, gave them to me, left the company. And so, what I did is, okay, we were definitely not doing well back then. I had no clue what I was doing, right? I'm a 22-year-old kid. And so I started getting really invested into training, learning, and developing myself. I learned a lot from Patrick Bet David. He has this great channel, Valuetainment. And then I learned a lot from Grant Cardone. And that's how, I started implementing a bunch of different things, processes, procedures, hiring more people, and growing the company. And we're an organization that right now has a total of 135 employees. We have 3 different brands, and under our main brand, which is STT Logistics Group, we have the main branch plus 3 franchises that are successfully operating under our name. So very proud to say that.
Oh my gosh, I almost get a little emotional. Do you listen to Tom Bilyeu or Ed Milet at all?
And yeah, the other guy you mentioned, never heard of him.
They sometimes do stuff together, but Cardone, he reminds me too much of how I grew up and that tough love model. So he just is off putting to
Okay.
me. But Ed Milet is like so my jam. But what you said is so cool because I think a lot of people, so many people, and I think a lot of Americans, myself included, people that have pretty comfortable lives, they say, oh, it's too hard to start a company. And I'm in a place right now where I'm figuring out my next chapter personally. And it can be so hard to come up with an idea, and this is hard and that's hard. And it's so easy to make excuses for things and not follow through. And I'm just like, your story of coming from you know from Guatemala and then coming here and figuring this whole thing out and making it happen in your 20s. I don't know. I mean, maybe you're a PhD and you missed out. You didn't tell me that part of the story and you're like some super academic.
No, I dropped out of school twice. I studied business administration first, dropped out on my second semester because I hated it. But my mom was really insistent on me going to university, so I went back and studied marketing for almost a year and then dropped out again. And it took 7 years for my parents to one day, we were sitting in traffic and they turned around and they said, hey, you know what? We think you made a good decision by not going to university and sticking to your company. Now, I do have to say, I started 11 more companies that have failed, right? Because you said, sometimes it's really hard to get started, and how do you figure out what to do? You just start doing. You just start doing and keep doing and keep doing, and you need to be willing to fail a lot, and it's fine. I mean, everybody fails. Everybody who tries anything fails. It's not easy to achieve anything at first, but if you keep trying and you start figuring out, what are you good at? What are your skills? What are your weaknesses that you need to develop? And you start, putting all that together and combine that with finding a niche or an industry that you really like and enjoy, and there you go. You just can figure it out like that. Now, another thing that I'm going to say is important is, like our mission states, we're a company dedicated to the growth of our associates, because we understand that the company, it's not the name, it's not the CRM, it's not the offices, computers, or any of that. The company is the people working at the company. So one of the key things for us to be successful is we invest a lot in our people's development. We pay different sort of trainings. We've had for 6 years almost our whole sales team on Cardone University. Now we have our own online academy where we do all sorts of training, more specialized for the freight industry, which is called Corbett Academy. And we even do an assignment every day, right? Which I know sounds weird for a company. It sounds like something from school, but it's just a quick video that you need to watch. And then the next morning, every morning we role play, and then we discuss what do you learn out of the video that you watched yesterday, right? So that's a dynamic that we've been doing for the last 5 years, almost 6 years, and it's developed our people and therefore developed the company and made the company better.
Yeah, obviously Gary Vee and the whole and the likes, they talk about the next generation being, so much that model of really having empathy, not just for the user on the outside, and especially I think we've moved away from having empathy for shareholders, short-term gains, to having empathy for the team that's building the stuff and giving them ownership and responsibility. And I think that's so cool. It's something that I'm really passionate about. Ed Milet always says, have a vision, have a dream so big that you understand that the people on your team have dreams, and so their dreams and goals and visions need to fit inside of whatever you're building. And so I
Exactly.
love what you just said about that. But we're running out of time here, and I do want to let our listeners know, where can people find and connect with you, Andre, and where can people find and learn more about STT Logistics Group?
Sure. So you can go into the website sttlogisticsgroup.com. If anybody was interested on applying with the company, you can send your CV to cv@sttlg.us. And I'm on every social platform as Andre Corbert, but honestly, the only one I use is Instagram. All the other social media platforms are run by my marketing team and they're just reposting content there. So if anybody wants to connect directly with me, I would say Instagram at Andre Corbett is going to be the easiest way to do so.
Awesome. Andre, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's really inspiring, and I just appreciate so much having this time with you. You've inspired me, hopefully many people listening, so thank you.
Hopefully. Thank you very much, Barry. Thank you for having me.